What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So last night we had the Game Awards, and I recorded a video after the awards show ended going over some of my thoughts for the announcements and the Game of the Year winner, so make sure you check that video out here on the channel. But today, we have some pretty big stuff to go over, which does include the FTC now moving to block the Microsoft Activision Blizzard deal, so we'll check that one out. And we're also going to be talking about Sony taking a shot at Nintendo after the whole 10-year deal had been announced between Nintendo and Microsoft for Call of Duty. And we're also going to be talking about a demo that appears to have been leaked a bit early for Square Enix's big title to kick off 2023. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawn Wave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with the Game Awards, specifically though, sales that are going live across these different platforms. And you will see more and more of them pop up, or probably even popped up during that show. But for now, at the time of this recording, Nintendo's did go live, and we can see this over on their sales and deals page, titled the Critically Acclaimed Partner Sale. And this is going to run through until December 18th at midnight. And basically all of the games on here are highly rated titles, like Akami HD, $10. If you don't have Akami, come on, what are you doing? Just go ahead and pick that one up. Hades at $12.49. Shin Megami Tensei 5 is marked down 50%. Hollow Knight at $7.50. Disco Elysium down 50%. $5 for Celeste. And then we have Ori and the Will of the Wisps at $10.19. And while there are a lot of really good titles in here, if I wanted to just recommend one game that I think is a really cool pickup here, $10 for Death's Door, I think is a good one to grab if you were even just curious about it. It is a quality title, but let me know some of your thoughts on the different games that are for sale here, and of course, drop some suggestions in the comments. Also, we do have Dragon Quest Treasures out today on the Switch, and reviews went live yesterday, which we can see this over on Metacritic, coming in with a score of 77. This is on 23 critic reviews. We can see the split here, 18 positive, 5 mixed, 0 negative. We have Screen Rant dropping a 90 on it, saying Dragon Quest Treasures is an engaging yet easygoing monster recruiting game full of surprises and humor, and perhaps most importantly, it's a ton of fun. That was something I saw pointed out here by many reviews, whether they liked it or not. It seems like it's a more simplistic RPG, maybe catered more towards a younger audience, but it's still fun for all ages. And if we go down here to the gamer, they say I have a lot of conflicting feelings about Dragon Quest Treasures. It's a perfectly serviceable game that accomplishes what it sets out to do in creating a laid-back gameplay loop of treasure hunting and monster collecting, but it's also a shallow experience that feels like it's too big a departure from the Dragon Quest formula, with the gamer giving it a 50. So I will check out Dragon Quest Treasures eventually. I just have a lot of stuff I'm playing right now, so this is a game that if I grabbed now would probably go immediately into my backlog and I'd check it out sometime next year. But let me know if you are picking up Dragon Quest Treasures and some of your thoughts on the reviews. Oh, and to the surprise of no one, it does look like another MLB The Show will be coming out next year. We can see this over on Twitter from Gamatsu. MLB The Show 23 has been rated for PS5, Xbox Series, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch in Brazil. Typically, as they mention here, you'll see the official announcements ahead of spring training in January or early February, and they'll look to launch the title a couple of months after that. No mention of PC, and that is something that I have seen many people asking for, is some sort of PC support for this title, but nothing so far when it comes to the ratings here. And this is another game that we basically expect to drop into Game Pass day one, so we'll look towards the beginning of 2023 to see it officially announced. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Sony taking a shot at Nintendo after an announcement that Nintendo and Microsoft had reached a 10-year agreement for Call of Duty going to Nintendo's platforms in the future. Most likely, it's not going to be for the Switch, and we'll talk a bit more about that in the next topic. But for now, let's see what Sony had to say about this whole thing with Call of Duty and the 10-year agreement for Nintendo. We can see this posted up over on Xbox Era, and this is citing a thread over on Reset Era from user Itis, who posted up what appears to be an internal memo that Sony had sent out. They say Activision Blizzard could supply Call of Duty to Nintendo today, but doesn't, because Nintendo's younger audience is not interested in the first-person shooter, and a previous version of the game on its console was a commercial flop. And So they're referring to Call of Duty when that released on the Wii U. We had like Black Ops 2 on there. I remember that coming out like alongside of the Wii U at launch. And it was an okay version of Call of Duty. It was compared directly, obviously at the time, to the Xbox 360 version, and the 360 version ran it better, which was kind of weird because the Wii U obviously had more RAM and was viewed as more capable, but nonetheless, it was there, and of course, it was probably not going to do well on the Wii U since the Wii U itself did not do well, 13.5 million or so consoles. So you then look across at the Switch at over 114 million. It's probably going to see more success just based on the overall install size that they have with the current system. I do think it's humorous though that they mentioned the younger audience, and a lot of people pointed this out online. If you pick up a headset and go into a match of Call of Duty, just a random match, into the room, and you don't have your own party chat or anything set up on Discord, nothing like that. Just kind of test the room and see how everyone sounds. You're probably going to hear a lot of younger kids on your team. I mean, really, in my time selling video games to parents who went to Call of Duty as the second option because Grand Theft Auto was what was tried to pass off first, I can confirm there are a lot of kids who get their parents to buy them Call of Duty. So I don't know if I would go with that M rating as being the determining factor of, oh yeah, everyone playing this are adults. Not necessarily. And at this time, I would say the Switch, just based on, again, its install size, probably quite a few adults playing the Switch, considering it actually can fit into most adult lifestyles who can't necessarily be anchored to a TV to play their games. They did have another comment here where they said, furthermore, Nintendo's Switch could not run Call of Duty easily and may never be able to. Sony argues, MLEX understand, developing a version of the game compatible with the Switch could take years, making a 10-year licensing deal meaningless. Okay, so the obvious thing, again, is most likely, Call of Duty, the version we know at this time, would not find its way to the Switch. The 10-year agreement wouldn't start until, Microsoft owns Call of Duty and would then be able to move a version to Nintendo's platform. And based on the way things are going, it might be into 2024 when they actually own Activision Blizzard, and then they would start developing for Nintendo's next platform. So really, they could move Call of Duty Mobile to the Switch, rename it something else, and make like a customized version, and maybe that would be a way to get Call of Duty on the Switch a bit faster. But for me, this is so long-term that they might be looking towards the launch of Nintendo's next platform, maybe the holiday of 2024 for Call of Duty to finally debut on a Nintendo platform since the Wii U. But it's just Sony immediately responding to what they saw in front of them, which was obviously Microsoft trying to get at them with 10-year deals all over the place for Call of Duty and having Sony be the odd one out. But as we saw yesterday, things flipped on Microsoft pretty quickly, which leads us into our next topic. We can see this headline over on the Washington Post. FTC sues to block Microsoft's acquisition of game giant Activision. And this was posted up on Twitter with the FTC. I actually even have an entire Twitter thread, by the way, kind of explaining some of their reasoning and position here, which, what a time to be alive. The FTC is dropping a Twitter thread to go over why they would be suing to block this massive, near $70 billion acquisition in tech and gaming. Anyway, we can see this thread from the FTC where they say FTC seeks to block Microsoft Corp's acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Agency alleges that maker of Xbox would gain control of top video game franchises, enabling it to harm competition in high-performance gaming consoles and subscription services by denying or degrading rivals' access to its popular content. FTC's complaint notes that the $69 billion deal, Microsoft's largest ever and the largest ever in the video gaming industry, would enable it to suppress competitors to its Xbox gaming consoles and its rapidly growing subscription content and cloud gaming business. The agency's complaint also points to Microsoft's record of acquiring and using valuable gaming content to suppress competition from rivals' consoles, including its acquisition of ZeniMax, parent company of Bethesda Softworks. Agency notes that Microsoft decided to make several of Bethesda's titles, including Starfield and Redfall, Microsoft exclusives, despite assurances it had given to European antitrust authorities that it had no incentive to withhold games from rival consoles. With control over Activision's blockbuster franchises, Microsoft would have both the means and motive to harm competition by manipulating Activision's pricing, degrading Activision's games quality, or player experience on rival consoles and gaming services, according to the FTC. FTC alleges the tech giant could also change the terms and timing of access to Activision's content or withhold content from competitors entirely, resulting in harm to consumers. Now, that was a lot to read, but I wanted to give you the entire context of their Twitter thread here, and we did get a response from Brad Smith, who's the president at Microsoft, saying, "We have been committed since day one to addressing competition concerns, including by offering earlier this week proposed concessions to the FTC. While I believe in giving peace a chance, we have complete confidence in our case and welcome the opportunity to present our case in court." And yeah, it sounds like the gloves are about to come off for Microsoft. They've already kind of been off for Sony. They're just throwing everyone under the bus at this point. They just threw Nintendo under the bus with the Switch. They threw Battlefield and EA under the bus, saying they couldn't compete with Call of Duty. They threw their own studios under the bus and saying they couldn't compete with Call of Duty, which, yeah, a lot of this just has to do with Call of Duty for Sony. It's very important for their PlayStation numbers, specifically for PlayStation Network numbers, their signups for their online paid subscription, which is tied directly to online multiplayer access for these paid games like Call of Duty. So clearly they have some numbers that say all of this is worth doing. And at this point, they've obviously had a pretty serious influence across the board. We see it with the CMA, and now we're seeing it with FTC. And at this point, I don't think anyone knows what's going to happen here, other than it's gonna take a while, most likely, to figure this out. So we had originally had the timeline set as June 2023 being the latest that this deal would be closing. I don't think that's necessarily on the table anymore, so I'm trying to figure out what happens. Can they do an extension between Microsoft and Activision and come to an agreement there? Do they have to step away from it if they go beyond that? I'm not 100% sure myself. This is where the lawyers get involved and they have to figure out all the legal speak and all these different things. The thing that I'm really curious about, though, is we saw what happened when Epic and Apple went to court. A lot of discovery happened. A lot of information got out there. That's how we found out that Sony has like this cross-play tax and some backroom dealings that were going on between all these different companies, a lot of redactions. But that's the thing I'm really curious about. If all this goes to discovery and that they present a lot of facts, documents end up leaking, what do we learn about Microsoft, Sony, and even Nintendo, as they've all been, participating in a lot of these different things that would lead up to the idea of exclusivity, subscription services, cloud gaming. So it's interesting times. Most likely, though, we're going to be heading into 2023 and probably go through most of that to come to a resolution here. And who knows what's about to happen with Microsoft and Activision Blizzard, but certainly got a lot more difficult for them. Next up, let's talk about Forspoken. This game is coming out in about a month and a half, January 24th, 2023, and I'll admit it hasn't been the best run-up in terms of marketing and reception online. Like, I'm really not that excited for the game at all leading up to it, so they're gonna have to come up with different ways to get people interested in this game. And it appears they at least have one thing on deck, which we can see this posted up over on Twitter from Gamatsu saying PlayStation Japan messed up. Looks like a Forspoken demo will be announced on December 9th. They're supposed to be doing some sort of showcase here. And I mean, you can see the PlayStation Japan appears to have tweeted this out a bit early. Forspoken demo announcement trailer. And to me, this is one of the best ways they can actually get people to look at this game a bit more, allowing you to play it, because as they've shown it, I don't think it's really done it for a lot of people. And if it maybe controls a bit better than it looks, or maybe they have some added elements into the demo that look better just natively on your screen, which this seems to be more of a graphical showcase, I think, for them. All things considered, I'm sure they have, character, a world they've built out, story, all these different things. But the part that has drawn my interest somewhat are the visuals and the effects. And that's something that would look better through way of a demo that you download, as opposed to trying to get an idea as to what or what we're seeing here through compressed streaming and all of this. So, I mean, I'll try it out. If it's going to be a demo that is at least somewhat lengthy to give me an idea as to the gameplay loop, that would at least help out a bit. And from what we've seen with Square in the past, their demos a lot of time have the save data that then carries directly into the title. So if anything, maybe we'll just get an early start on Forspoken to see if it's something we want to check out in January when it releases. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about the Famitsu sales charts. I've been curious to follow along with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet with their opening month or so of sales, as clearly they broke sales records right out of the gate, 10 million sold in 3 days. And in Japan, it was ridiculous there as well. So let's head over here to the top 10, starting with Pokemon Scarlet and Violet at the top. Even though it's down 46% week on week, still 310,000 copies have sold. By the way, coming up on 3.5 million physical copies sold in Japan, puts it right up alongside of Splatoon 3 already, and that was an absolute beast when it released there in Japan. But we can see Splatoon 3 there at the number 2 spot, 38,922, so once again, a pretty big drop-off from the first and second spot. Mario Rabbids Galaxy Battle, that just now released, by the way, in Japan, 17,647. Then we have Minecraft, Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, because of course, Nintendo Switch Sports, Yu-Gi-Oh! Debuting with 7,396 copies, Smash Bros. Ultimate, Mario Party Superstars, and then Horizon Forbidden West. Moving over to the hardware, the Switch at the top, 152,284, close to margin of error from last week, almost evening that one out. Then we have the PS5, 27,835, down from the week prior. But Jim Ryan did have like a video showcase that he was part of and mentioned that they were working out supply issues with Japan. So the number here should be increasing, especially throughout December, so we'll keep an eye on that. Then the PS4 somehow selling over 4,000 units. The Xbox Series, 1,854, and then the 3DS somehow at 111. Now, it does appear that the Switch will be finishing about 700,000 to 800,000 units down from last year, which actually isn't too bad considering it's going to get to 4.5 or 4.6 million units sold for the year in just Japan. So the Switch is slowing down a bit there, as you'd expect, considering it's sold almost 28 million units, and Pokemon has been a nice spark there for it. However, going into 2023, I think a lot of people are expecting Nintendo to start at least spinning the wheels a bit, heading towards the next generation platform for Nintendo, and that would make a lot of sense to launch that in 2024. But for now, Pokemon continues to roll along, and it's pulling the Switch with it. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday. We're asked, what's the feeling on Forspoken right now? 62% said I'm not really interested in it. There you go. 31% said I might get it if reviews are really good. And then only 7% said I'm excited for it, ready to get it ASAP. I kind of wanted to check back in after this demo releases, especially if maybe I'm looking at the demo and I'm like, wow, this is more interesting than I was expecting necessarily. But yeah, I'm looking around. Don't really see a lot of people talking about Forspoken. I see plenty of people talking about Resident Evil 4 Remake or Dead Space Remake, but Forspoken, even though they moved it out of the holiday season now into next year, it's still kind of been lost in the shuffle, even though it's now coming out in January with not as much around it. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Deliver saying, it's pretty strange that Sony is so obsessed with COD. If you isolate their motives, it's not really about Activision Blizzard or King at this point. They didn't seem to even mention a peep about Diablo or Overwatch or their dormant IPs, and most of that is because monthly active users, especially with engagement through their subscription service with PlayStation Plus Essential, very important to Sony and their bottom line. And Call of Duty, I feel like, is responsible for getting them to where they are currently, since it relies heavily on a sustainable multiplayer environment, and Call of Duty has provided that every single year for Sony. It's one of the reasons they put such a priority on getting the marketing for it throughout that PlayStation 4 generation. And they might be concerned that, wow, even if we don't lose Call of Duty, if it goes into Game Pass, I mean, people might look at that and say, well, why don't I just get Game Pass and an Xbox? And then you start to see people move from PlayStation to Xbox and their monthly active users drop, and there's less of a reason to have their PlayStation Plus Essential. So yeah, they have a good reason to focus and hone in on Call of Duty, considering it's so important to the PlayStation ecosystem, even though, yes, it's a third-party game. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Were Sony's comments around the Switch and Call of Duty with that 10-year deal. Do you agree with them? Do you think they're wrong about, well, it's all adults playing Call of Duty, clearly. And then also, what about the FTC moving now to sue and block the deal between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard? Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.